And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ethan Karp, President and CEO of Magnet, the Manufacturing Advocacy and Growth Network. Under his leadership, Magnet has been a driving force in strengthening Northeast Ohio's manufacturing sector. They're helping companies innovate, grow, and create opportunities for people all across our region. Ethan's incredible career in manufacturing has been built on a tremendous academic foundation, including earning a Bachelor's of Science from Miami University, as well as both a Master's of Science and PhD in chemical biology from Harvard. Beyond his professional career, Ethan has also been deeply engaged in Cleveland's civic life, working to connect businesses, community leaders, and other leadership in ways that build both economic strength and social vitality. He is a very active member of the Cleveland Leadership Center Board of Trustees, as evidenced by our board retreat we just completed on Friday. He's also a regular speaker at various CLC programs, as well as a judge for our annual civic pitch competition, Accelerate. And I would be remiss if I did not say he is also a member of the exceptional leadership class of 2017. Today, we're going to explore Ethan's personal leadership journey, the ways that he has brought Magnet's mission into the civic arena, and his perspective on the power of partnerships to move both people and our region forward. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ethan Karp.
Thank you, Becky. And hello to everybody, especially my classmates out there. It's wonderful to see so many of you. Let me start this leadership session with the ultimate leadership question. What makes humans the apex species? Think about it. How have we managed to inhabit every continent, survive disasters, pandemics, and wars, even fly to space? It's not our brains. Chimps beat us at short-term memory. It's not opposable thumbs. Plenty of primates have those too. It's not tools. Even crows can bend twigs into hooks. It's not population. Ant colonies outnumber us by far. And they also build vast societies, wage wars. They even farm. They farm fungus. But they don't collaborate beyond their own colony. We do. And that's why humans dominate. Because we do something no other species ever has. We scale collaboration to billions of strangers. That's why in less than 3,000 generations, we went from stone tools to spaceflight, from fire pits to fiber optics, from local tribes to global supply chains. Our superpower has never been brains or brawn, it's collaboration. It's what allows us to build cities, launch rockets, rebuild after pandemics. And nowhere is that clearer than in manufacturing, because the last few decades have been a roller coaster. The collapse of big steel, a global pandemic, historic labor shortage, trade wars that reshaped entire supply chains. Each crisis tested our survival. And each time, manufacturers turned crisis into comeback, the common thread, collaboration. It's the force that makes or breaks industries and leaders. So let's look at 5 lessons from manufacturing that I think every leader can use, certainly ones that I've learned over my decade and a half of doing this. Lesson 1, small acts can have outsized impact. Sometimes collaboration starts small, a factory tour, a conversation with a mentor, one moment that shifts somebody's trajectory. Let me introduce you to 3 people. Eli came to Magnet's Access to Manufacturing Careers, a short, intensive training program. At first, he wasn't sure it was for him, but he discovered that he had a real talent on the shop floor, and now he's building a bright future. Zabrin drove a bus for 17 years. One day she saw a brochure with a woman who was welding, and she thought, hey, that could be me. She took the leap, trained as a certified production technician, was hired by DuPont. She doubled her income and says that she can see the pride in her kids' eyes. Mary walked out of prison with doubts but determination. She joined Access, worked hard, graduated, and earned her first manufacturing job. Today, she's a supervisor at Talon Products, mentoring others the way she was mentored. Her courage to take that first step has multiplied into opportunity for dozens more. That's the power of small sparks. They look like single lives changed, but when you multiply them, they become a pipeline of talent. Certainly our industry, but so do many, desperately need. And that's really what Magnet does. We don't just celebrate these sparks, we systematize them. We turn them into programs that bring schools, companies, coaches, funders, communities, all to the same table. Programs like Access, Manufacturing Skills Bootcamp, Early college, early career, a paid internship program for high schoolers modeled after European apprenticeship. Coach U, an upskilling program for career coaches. Lighthouse tours, opportunities for manufacturers to learn from one another about each other's technology innovation. These programs take small moments and scale them. They've launched thousands of careers, small sparks that ripple into big impact. Lesson number 2, build ecosystems, not silos. When COVID hit, so did a shortage of protective equipment. Immediately, manufacturers in Ohio pivoted to help. Whiskey companies making hand sanitizer, plastic firms retooling to make face shields, textile manufacturers switching to make gowns. No single company could have achieved this alone. But together, competitors became collaborators. They shared design, shared suppliers, shared risk. That's the power of ecosystems. We saw it again in the Cuyahoga County Manufacturing Sector Partnership. For years, schools, nonprofits, and employers all worked separately on the talent problem, but the pieces didn't fit. Inspired by a collaboration of funders locally, including Cuyahoga County, we tried something different. We brought everyone into one room. We built trust. We co-designed solutions. And in just 3 years, we've helped more than 3,000 people launch manufacturing careers. It worked because silos fell away. Employers didn't just complain about the pipeline, they built one. Schools didn't just guess, they asked. Nonprofits didn't train people and hope, they aligned to the real jobs of these manufacturers. That's what ecosystems do. They turn isolated events into collective breakthroughs. The sector partnership in Cuyahoga County has shrunk our manufacturing local talent gap by nearly half. It showed what's possible when ecosystems replace silos. But even with that progress, the challenge across Northeast Ohio remains daunting to meet our talent pipeline needs. So that brings me to lesson number 3, investing in people as a core strategy. Region-wide, we still face 20,000 open jobs, 10,000 of them in manufacturing, perennially open, they never close. That's why we can't just wait for people to show up. We have to invest in them. And if you treat people as costs, you get expenses. If you treat them as assets, you get returns. If you treat people as partners, perhaps people as people, you get transformation. And when you see people as partners, you stop overlooking the talent that can be right in front of you. Women, people of color, returning citizens, the underemployed, all areas that are under-indexed in manufacturing. Last year, Magnet programs helped 1,600 new people enter manufacturing, many women and people of color. Each of those jobs supports 3 to 5 more in their and our local economy. This isn't about charity. This is strategy. Because when you treat people as partners, when you collaborate with job seekers, when you invest in people, you don't just fill jobs, you actually fuel your growth. Lesson 4, make technology a shared journey. Smart manufacturing is projected to be a $150 billion industry by 2030. Yet 72% of manufacturers in our region still don't use those emerging technologies. Why? Because 99% of our manufacturers are small, family-owned companies. They lack cash, engineering teams, and often confidence. Magnet knows this really well because we help every year hundreds of small and medium manufacturers across Northeast Ohio create new products, go from a startup idea to a business, find new markets, streamline production, and we do this all using and helping them implement the latest and greatest technologies. For these companies, though, technology often feels like a gamble, and fear of cost, of job loss, of the unknown often wins. We saw this recently on the docks. If you all remember, there was this big strike that cost $5 billion a day. And workers weren't just fighting for pay. They were actually fighting against automation and associated AI that would enable that automation. It was the first large-scale AI backlash to hit the streets, and it's not going to be the last. The lesson is clear. If technology is introduced as a surprise or a threat, you risk revolt, whether it's picket lines or quiet quitting. That's why, particularly as we enter the AI era, leaders must make technology transparent, start small, invest in their skills. In manufacturing, in most cases, AI is not going to replace people, and companies of all sorts need to embark and accelerate their own technology journeys together with their teams. Lesson 5, cultivate resilience through inner work. Leadership isn't only about how we work with others. I've learned this a bajillion times in this role. It's also about how we work with ourselves. As the leader of a largely, well, not largely, but a large amount of federal funding that comes to us, I've had a front row seat to the recent churn in Washington. Priorities shifting, rules changing, uncertainty every single day. And for those of you thinking, yeah, but you work with manufacturers, yes, we do. And it has still affected us in big ways. And I've also seen the toll it takes on leaders when we just try to grind through without renewal. Resilience isn't about white knuckling forward. It's about building an honest relationship with yourself. The best leaders I know make that inner work a practice. Self-awareness to help them see their blind spots. Therapy or coaching, or in my case, both, to process stress and grow capacity. Reflection to turn your mistakes into learnings. Cultivating more flow states, sort of moments of broad awareness, where creativity can replace the panic that seems to oh so often creep up these days. And that's why I am, as Becky said, a proud member of CLC's executive committee, and also very grateful for the CLC. Because resilience isn't built in isolation. It grows when leaders support and challenge each other, especially on big civic issues that affect us all. Now, let me leave you where I began. What makes humans the apex species? It's the ability to build futures together that none of us could reach alone. It's why we crossed oceans, built cities, cured diseases, and yes, reinvented entire regions when industries collapsed. It's why manufacturing again and again has come back strong. Youngstown after steel, Lorraine after shipbuilding, Akron after rubber. The pattern is always the same. Collapse, then reinvention. And the engine is always the same. People working together with vision and courage. That isn't just a manufacturing lesson, that is a leadership lesson. Every leader will face their own version of collapse, when the old way no longer works and the future is not clear. In those moments, the choice is really simple. Cling to the past or build something new together. Because history is clear. Despite centuries of conflict and conquest, our greatest power is not dominance, it's partnership. We're not just the apex predator. We're the apex cooperator. And that's the only kind of leader the future will reward. So let's be remembered not for how fiercely we fought and competed, but for how boldly we cooperated to build what's next.
I think I'm going to have to get some swag with the Apex Cooperator printed on it because you are, as you know, Ethan, singing not just Magnet's language, but CLC's language as well. It ultimately comes down to cooperation.
Given everything going on in the world, it was very cathartic to write and then deliver this. So thank you all for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And let me encourage, I know we've got lots of folks joining us. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'd love to start a little bit, Ethan. First question, your first lesson, small acts can have big impact. I'm curious, as you reflect on your own leadership journey, where was there a small act of investing in you by somebody else that really had a big impact on the career and the civic journey that you built?
I'm not sure it was small in this case. I mean, it began small. It began with, hey, Ethan, why don't you come over to Magnet for a little bit while I was still at McKinsey and check this thing out and do some volunteer stuff. And, you know, you'd say, oh, wow, that was getting Ethan to do some free volunteer work. Well, no, it was actually a forward-looking person saying this could be a cool place for Ethan to actually have an impact that he wants to have, which I did on the community and feel that. So I would say that was a small act. That same board chair then spent the next 8 years mentoring me in my current role. And every single one of those was a small act that rippled into the organization. Every time he sat down with me and said, do you really want to do it that way? It was remarkable. So pitch for mentor, and also Felix Brook, my mentor. So can't overstate the opportunity, but then the stick with it and guide me on every cultural decision, which Becky is really the flip of that. And when I look at the small things, I can point to examples of what we do, which I did in the talk, but the things that as a leader affect me most directly, and I do, are all the small little cultural touch points, the extra 30 minutes here, the how you doing in your life over here, that those are the things that warm my heart the most, is just culturally, that's that investing in people, how we can actually make those small moments mean that people feel good about coming to work every day.
Yeah, that's actually what's going to be my next question. So how do you bring your values or principles to the people that you're managing? I've had the benefit of being able to walk around your facility at Magnet, which is fantastic. You have lots of different people in lots of different roles. Yep, we're looking at it behind your shoulder. So what specifically are you doing to cultivate the kind of collaboration and comfort with risk taking that you're talking about within your own team?
So we have our values. Everybody talks about values, but I mean, we're not cultish, but one step below cultish with it. I mean, we have a full day a year. It's baked into behaviors that we look at and grade for performance reviews. We start every staff meeting talking about it. You know, it's not Ritz-Carlton level, let's recite one of these in a stand-up meeting every single morning, but we use the language of delivering for our clients, the manufacturers, or internally if you're serving internally, building teams. So we bring the best of a team, the collaboration piece, not just lone wolves, relationships. So you got to have trust in there, continuous improvement, very manufacturing focused, right? We're never going to be perfect, but we can always be getting better. And then you have the whole concept of personal growth. This starts getting at, well, we don't just want you to be a cog in our machine. We want you to grow as a person. Hopefully that growth as a person aligns with where we're going as the organization. But if it doesn't, and you've reached a certain level, you've contributed, look, we want to be there for you no matter what you do. And then lastly, psychological safety, which gets to some of these risk-taking, you know, explicitly. We talk to people, look, you have to be accepting. You can't take that idea that's patently stupid and shut it down right away because you want that person to get better at suggesting ideas. So how do you treat people the way you want them to be treated so that they feel good? Even though you tell them you're not going to do their idea, they feel good about having brought it up. And I would say it is the taking of those values, articulating them, and then using them constantly to reinforce and discuss behaviors that makes the really big difference. I'm in a small organization. I think one of the beauties of a small organization too is you get to know people personally. You can have a web of interpersonal relationships. That's one of our values, but that relationship can be very strong and trusting, and thus people share the difficult stuff that is often the most meaningful blind spots in your organization that you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And people have the courage to tell me because I've spent a lot of time with them developing a relationship where they're like, Ethan, you do know this crazy thing is happening over here, and nobody's willing to tell you about it. So
speaking of relationships, let's look outside of Magnet. One of the questions in the chat asks about whether Magnet collaborates with colleges and universities to help train recent graduates who may not be able to land a job in their major. We've heard about how the market is tightening and it's tough out there. What are you doing to collaborate with those recent graduates? Seems like a nice way to solve two problems at once, or maybe two opportunities at once.
So manufacturing is fun in that I talk about tech jobs and technicians and, you know, floor folks, but there's a huge demand for every other career too, right? You've got the people that work in the back office, you got finance, you got marketing, you have the whole gamut of things. So we are always trying to expose people to this as a viable career field, which, by the way, drives half of Northeast Ohio's economy. So really important. And there's 10,000 manufacturers here. There is a role for anybody graduating with pretty much any degree to slot in, even if they don't want to go the technical route. So yes, we work with colleges a lot on this, although our big push right now is that technician level. We have that 3,000 I mentioned, that'll continue. That's entry level, almost no skill. But there is a level that does require something like a community college intervention of some sort, series of courses, certificates. The governor just released their workforce blueprint. This was something that we helped co-author with some of our collaborators in the Manufacturers Association at the state, so that they're actually using the language that we're putting out there for how universities can align cooperation of a sort to all have sort of the same standards around what a technician is and thus companies can feel more comfortable that they're getting what they actually need for that really important technician. Sidebar, why do we need technicians? It's all this technology I mentioned being adopted. Well, it all breaks all the time, and you need people to be able to repair it, fix it, anticipate it, install it. That's where a lot of manufacturing jobs are going.
You mentioned as an organization that receives some federal funding, some state funding, and you have good, strong relationships and need to have good, strong relationships at both the state and the federal level. We're obviously living in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty and things are changing. How are you approaching this time period at the state level, at the federal level, in either expanding relationships, building new relationships? How are you responding?
Out of necessity, we have expanded relationships. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen all of our federal legislators in their office. I've gone to the offices of 10 current and future leadership folks at the state. And you know, the beautiful part about one aspect is they are wonderfully supportive of our program. And it's nice to talk to people. We have relationships, et cetera. There is a disconnect. In fact, yesterday morning, I was in Detroit at an event that Ford CEO put on, and he was talking to a town hall of us, and somebody asked him a similar question, and his answer was yes, the things that the administration wishes to do around manufacturing and workers is very good, but it hasn't yet translated into the actions on the ground. And so that's where we're at in terms of we are building relationships, then trying to get those relationships to translate into action on the ground inside the bureaucracy that has to eventually execute. I think we can all see today on the eve of a shutdown, right? Well, the day of the shutdown, I think we can all see that things are not exactly humming along in any of these ways. So the broader answer to your question, Becky, is that's what we're doing. The broader answer is we are figuring out how to adapt to uncertainty. Like that is the only thing we can do. We are building all the relationships we can, and we are simultaneously saying we have a mission, we have a goal, we have committed team members. How are we going to drive impact no matter what happens with the federal funding, up, down, delayed, et cetera? I wish there was a better answer than that, but I think that is what we are all contending with, hence my fifth point around resilience.
Right. Another question from the audience, Ethan, can you talk a little bit about collaboration versus competition and the business imperative to capture market share, also known as staying in business? Do you believe that partnerships and collaboration can only go so far, or do you find yourself eaten by your competitors?
It depends on the issue. It also depends on the mindset. So sure, you're not going to give your trade secrets away and you're going to protect things and you're going to try to win in that respect. But there's 10,000 manufacturers. Are you telling me that there's not 4 or 5 that couldn't be working better together, coming up with ideas, strengthening their supply chains, coming up with ideas to one another? Maybe that same 4 or 5 are replicated over here and those two groups compete. So I believe in competition. I believe in free market forces, but what's the goal? The goal is to have the best product to serve the best customer, best client, or rather to serve best you can your customer. That's your goal. And if it involves somebody else, you would involve that other person. If it's a competitor, I mean, how many competitors are bought by other competitors constantly? They're your competitor today, and tomorrow when it makes more sense to be a giant entity, you end up buying them. So it's more of the mentality than it is like, yeah, no, of course, free market competition is going to occur in the private market. In the civic sector, it is a different ballgame altogether because competition just, I'll be frank, pisses off the funders and the limited bandwidth of the civic and business community who are the drivers and leaders of any civic engagement because they don't know where to put their resources and it isn't a profit maximizing thing. So I use the same idea. What's the mission? What's the goal? The customers, are they people that we're trying to get jobs? Are they companies we're trying to grow the jobs? That's the mission. How do we work with folks rather than competing with them to make that mission happen? So it is slightly different when you talk civic versus the private sector, but I still think the mentality gets us much further if we're trying to think of what's the end goal and how do we cooperate best to do that, obviously not to our detriment.
So I want to take us back to your lesson number 4, making technology a shared journey. There's a lot of fear around technology, as you mentioned. I see it every day, and I'm trying to use AI some way every day to help sort of minimize some of that fear. What's working in the manufacturing industry for the very, very risk averse to technology individual that you're working with or company?
They're not starting with AI. In manufacturing, there's a lot of other things that can be done besides AI. And AI is fraught with cybersecurity issues, et cetera. So outside of, okay, you write that email, the actual stuff around, hey, coding stuff and having machines learn from each other and from what they're doing, machine learning, that stuff isn't being independently done by companies yet. What is being done is they're putting the robot in, or they're upgrading the piece of machinery that has some of that AI already built in. So it's actually not the adoption of AI in particular in manufacturing. It is the adoption of technologies writ large that have to be done with and together your employees, right? A robot could be something that takes away the job and has historically been. Now we're in a phase where the machines that are right down there, they're going to do the boring, repetitive 20% of the job. The person's going to be able to do the rest of the job and more and fix that robot, et cetera. So I would say AI is slowly penetrating into the manufacturing sector, but frankly, I think it's going to be a lot easier to bring them on board because there's all these other technologies. It's your retail and all these other areas where I think they've not undergone the same level of automation, where you are going to lose jobs before you then have the better jobs that the AI has enabled.
So one more question from our audience, and then we'll move into our wrap up. So it's a long sort of context, but I'll read the summary question, which is, are local regional leaders speaking to national and global AI sector leaders about co-investing some of this $3 trillion in our homegrown workforce? Again, back to your pipeline concept.
Mm-hmm. The question is,
are local and regional leaders speaking with national and global leaders in the AI or technology sector about what we're doing for that pipeline, and specifically the pipeline here in Cleveland?
That's a great question. I'm sure the answer in pockets is yes. I just don't know it. So I'm not going to give a really compelling answer to that one, but they certainly should be. And we certainly should be talking about putting that money in because we all need it. We all need it. And I see there's a question also about the polymer cluster. So the polymer cluster is a wonderful example of everything I just talked about. Bring everybody together around industry needs. This is in Akron, bringing academia, and they've raised a ton of money to say, how do we help our plastics, our polymers companies innovate sustainable, new, biodegradable types of plastics? That's the type of changing innovation we need. And that's why you get all of these companies coming together with the ecosystem to say, how do we solve this? Because none of us are going to be able to do it ourselves. And it is a beautiful way to end as well, because that is an ecosystem and that is a collaboration that is working and has been put on steroids recently.
And that's the swag that I'm going to create. I heard it in my Leadership Cleveland class of 2018, our class trip. Philadelphia was our class trip, and their slogan at the time was moving from ego system to ecosystem. So from one swag to another. Please join me in thanking Dr. Ethan Karp for being today's leader in the lunch break spot. We're so grateful for your insights, for your passion, and for your dedication to building authentic collaborations, Ethan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.